I just imagine that my parents will never want to use these systems if like their neighbors can see whether they went to the doctors or whether like how much the salary they receive from the government. This is not a good world to be in. No company in the world is ever going to use fully transparent system, so we will need some data protection guarantees down the line. We shouldn't be leaking a bunch of personally identified information to arbitrary strangers on the internet. I think this is going to be a hard requirement for the space to grow beyond itself, the bubble or the niche they become here. I'm here with Adrian Brink of Anoma, Is Namada, and many other projects you've been familiar with, including Cosmos, but also be like a Cosmos coaster here running a valve here. Yeah, thanks for doing this. So Namada recently launched, and she's on mainnet, and there's the ecosystem of projects building there. And so maybe just for context, remind people of what Namada is and how it relates to also Anoma and like these different players. Yeah. I mean, very practically speaking, Namada is the first project in the Anoma ecosystem that I think is very much about trying out how we can have good end user data protection guarantees. It is it's a proof of stake system that is asset agnostic, connects via IBC to the rest of the ecosystem, and allows you to move any asset into it. Has some very cool retroactive public goods funding thing, has a cool steward system, has a much cleaner proof of stake implementation. Chris, my co-founder, who originally wrote the Cosmo proof of stake implementation, is like, yeah, let's now fix all the problems that we didn't have time to fix in the original implementation. So now Namada has this very idealized, fully spec'd out version of proof of stake, where you only pay as much. So the inflation amount is only as much as is required to get you the security that we actually want. And yeah, so Namada launched early this year or late last year. I know late last year, right? Yes, it launched late last year, and now it's going through the phases of mainnet. So I think currently on phase 2, phase 3 is being discussed. The very nice thing is a fully decentralized launch. I have nothing to do with any of the infrastructure anymore. There's now 6 different front ends running that you can use Namada through. There's 180, 190 validators operating the entire thing. It's like 4 or 5 different indexes, 4 or 5 different block explorers. So it's really amazing to see the community come together and so just like build this very complex ecosystem to enable end user part sequences, end user data protection guarantees. 5 now. So that's super exciting. And this is really like the first time that with the Anoma ecosystem, we're starting to experiment with like what do good user interfaces around some data protection guarantees look like? How do people want to use it in the end? And then for Anoma, I mean, Anoma is hitting private devnets right now with like the first 6 teams actively building intent-based applications, leveraging every part of the stack from so the heterogeneous trust model to the more ZK world of things in the Anoma ecosystem. And that's probably going to hit public testnets pretty soonish. So we have Namada, which is this base layer for user protection guarantees or data protection guarantees that enables users to interact with digital assets in a private way, in the way that their data is protected. And then Anoma is sort of the framework that, or the layer that allows this application to exist. Can you maybe just explain that distinction? Yeah, so Anoma is very much focused around it's the first generalized intent-centered protocol. It re-implements a distributed operating system for Web3, where right now we're still living in this world that's very transaction-centered, very VM-centric, and moving away from this world. Because intents, I think, as everyone, sort of like we have been talking about intents pretty, but we definitely weren't the first people to talk about intents, and we've been talking about intents for the last, called 3 to 4 years. And now last year, everyone started realizing like intent is clearly the right abstraction. And everyone is starting to play around with them, right? And so Anoma is just like the only and probably like has a year to year and a half, maybe even 2 years head start in the rest of the industry in terms of being fully generalized intents. that can come to arbitrary security sets. So Anoma is fully implemented from scratch in Elixir. There's specs out there, specs.anoma.net. There's an implementation on github.com/anoma/anoma. Fully written Elixir, which is very cool. And so you can really start building applications on that. For example, a multi-dimensional oil work exchange that's fully decentralized. It doesn't require central infrastructure. And just like anything that where you actually fundamentally need intents is like what Anoma is capable of. Namada is much more specific. It's like, let's like see if that like, let's try to fix this like very urgent problem, which is everything is currently transparent and it's hindering a bunch of use cases. Because honestly, my parents will never want to use these systems. Like no company in the world is ever going to use fully transparent system where all their competitors can see everything that's going on. And so Namada also has the facility similar to Zcash to, for example, optionally disclose about the data that you want to your regulator, for example. And so in that sense, this like Anoma is this very grand vision of like, what does the next 10 years blockchain development look like? Like where does the application development move? And I think if this is to the right sort of direction as we're seeing at the moment, and that's coming very soon. That's coming sort of by the middle of this year. And then Namada is like very specifically that let's get like the small component correct so that people can start using that.
Yeah, it's interesting how crypto is such a like. I mean, I is ideologically aligned with the ideas of capitalism, but this at the same time forgets that like capitalism is about information arbitrage, and everything is public on chain. It's just like there's such a dichotomy there that for me has never really made sense, especially like for businesses to use crypto rails that are fully open and where the data is fully on chain. Just doesn't make sense. I mean, even for individuals, but primarily for companies. Was that part of the ethos of building Anoma? The ability for businesses to build real world applications on chain and bringing more kind of real world value on chain?
Yes, a little bit, but like the ethos behind Anoma is more like in the middle of 2022, Chris Allen and I sat down and was like, okay, what the fuck are we doing here? And like at the time, everyone's like showing insane free smart contracts on Ethereum, and for some reason it was supposed to like make DeFi worth in practice, and it was supposed to be success, right? And we looked at this and we're like, okay, what is fundamentally required for the space to actually work out, right? Where this is not just like a sort of POI applications, but where this can actually be adopted by nation states worldwide, by individual, like hundreds of millions, maybe billions of individuals. And really what this led to is like there are three big counts. There is, you need to be able to get counterparty discovery back. So you need to have the ability, and this is what Intents and the Anoma P2P stack allow you to do. You need to have counterparty discovery systems that are inbuilt. So you have this very complex P2P stack that can route messages and so on. So that individuals that, like, for example, I'd like to trade ETH for Bitcoin, can discover other parties that want to trade ETH for Bitcoin or Bitcoin for ETH. The second big thing is you need to make heterogeneous trust work, because this is the only way to actually get scale-free networks. And so heterogeneous trust means that we don't all want to settle in the same security. And this is sort of like stems my fundamental belief that we should be building this tech to be World War III resilient. And Ethereum and Bitcoin and Solana and like all these systems will just go away on the eve of World War III because they rely on global consensus. And underwater sea cables are just up here cut, and then global consensus is shot. And now you need to have a system that is capable of operating in this like very dynamic heterogeneous trust environment, where maybe kind of in Lisbon, you can just operate an instance just local to Lisbon because you can maintain physical connectivity. So Anoma is designed for this heterogeneous trust world where it's as globally connected as possible, but as local as required. And this really comes down to this. I think is the only true scale-free application, because now you can it's effectively a bunch of data really sharding, where the shard for Lisbon, shard for Zurich, shard for global theory. And this is also a nice thing because it allows Anoma to sit on Ethereum. I mean, if everyone wants to use Ethereum for the settlement, fine with me, works with Anoma. If everyone wants to use Solana, fine with me too. If everyone wants to use the global Anoma one, also fine with me, right? But fundamentally, it's about choice. And the third aspect is you need good privacy guarantees. And this is not like neat application-specific products, but you need the right cryptographic primitives to allow developers to end users to decide what kind of level of privacy they want, or what kind of level of compression they want. And so Anoma it is really, so an application developer writes, for example, AAD as it's called a multi-sig smart contract, or a multi-sig application, or the DEX application. And then it becomes a user choice whether the user wants to attach AZK proof or plain text signature. And so it's not a choice of like the developer to decide like, oh, there's this private multi-sig application, there's this transparent multi-sig application, there's just one multi-sig application. And it depends on how the specific end users use it. And that was sort of a third large component that went into the design of Anoma. And I think this is like, when I look through the sort of history of how crypto has evolved, like we really had these three-step functions. We had from nothing to Bitcoin, and from Bitcoin to Ethereum, and we're going to see this third step function from like Ethereum and Ethereum like system VCM-centric worlds to Anoma and intent-centric, the intent machine and intent-centric world. And probably in like 10 years or so, we'll see another like fourth step function that I can't really envision yet. But like, this is like, we are currently at the cusp of like another step function that I think is just going to make this ecosystem so much bigger and interested in building develop. I mean, I think that next step function might have something to do with AI and the entirety of the block space across all chains being captured by transactions that are initiated by non-human actors. This is like, I was chatting with Billy about this here in Lisbon, and it's like he was saying in his talk that I red pilled him on an intense last year. I'm like, yes, it's because AI, it's fundamentally need in text. It's the right abstraction button. It's like it's not feasible that all of them send on-chain transactions that compete for the same block space. And intents allow you to do this like P2P communication. Like we send a bunch of intents around, and then need to collapse what we agreed on, and then we only settle what we agree. And this is like why you need this kind of very general intent-centric framework in order to actually start building truly on-chain AI agents, which is something that like you didn't think about at all when you built Anoma, like when you came up with Anoma, because AI was pretty in its infancy in terms of crypto at the time. But it just turned out that it's like we built a very general protocol that's like clearly also solving its use case, which is cool. Yeah. Just maybe side note, like that you're probably familiar with like informal systems project cycles and like how they're thinking about settlement. How does that compare to? I know I saw Ethan's talk, somewhere, and I don't know, that's not versed at that. The nice thing is, so cycles it's essentially an application around sort of local currency, for example, right, and credit clear. And Anoma is building this it's building the infrastructure to make something like cycles work. I mean, they also need TEs and so on, so like they need some extra cryptographic components. But so on the very basic distributed systems front, this is what like you need Anoma to make this kind of application work. So I describe this as it's an application that really benefits heavily from having or like needs Anoma's infrastructure to exist. So this nice thing, like I think in the space we have a tendency where I always say, well, how these things competing with each other, and most of the things are very complementary, like they build on it. But, yeah. So coming back to Anoma and Namada in this very intent centric say third step, right? We've got the Bitcoin smart contracts and then intents. What does the end game look like? And you know, in sort of like a 3 to 5 year time horizon as a result of intents being widely implemented across the application space. Is block space more unionized or more aggregated, or is it more dispersed and just intents are better at accessing this different block space? Like, how does the landscape change? Yeah, so we're clearly seeing this move right at the moment, and I think this is just this accelerating curve that there are many systems being launched effectively off of block space, as in like many different blockchains, but even like L2s. I mean, L2s are this custom marketing from, like say, like 3 out of 5 blockchain. These are all fundamentally just consensus controls, consensus instances, and so we're just seeing this accelerating trend of more and more of them getting launched. So I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see hundreds of thousands of blockchains, hundreds of thousands of these controller instances that control some original state or some like some delegated state. For example, like my phone, it's going to run its own blockchain. And like it just would be a one-on-one blockchain that just wouldn't sit on the same POP network with with Ethereum and global Anoma and global Nia and global Solana, and it will just say exchange messages over protocols like IPC with all the other systems. And so I think what we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years there is that like a lot of the applications are going to leverage probably Anoma. And Anoma is just going to be deployed on many of these different systems. Like my phone will run a local Anoma instance that I then use to like talk to Ethereum when I want to like send a multi-sig there. And I think this is really where it's heading, because we're clearly moving in this direction of hundreds of thousands of blockchains, and we need some well-defined operating system abstraction that allows you to actually, as a developer, to not have to decide, oh, I'm only building against this one specific thing, against this specific thing. You want to be able to build against Windows, essentially. And I think right now we're on the cusp of like where we're moving away from building against specific CPUs, traditional computing, to rather building against like Windows or Linux as an operating system abstraction.
In your example, like, does the phone need to run its own blockchain? I mean, the phone has a trusted execution environment. The phone can simply sign it. It doesn't need to keep track of its own transactions if the state is being managed like by a third party, blockchain basically.
Let's say it this way: for the simplicity of the abstraction, it's much easier to think of your phone as being a one-on-one blockchain that keeps some state locally. For example, and currently, if you have a wallet installed, you keep, for example, your balance locally, right? So you're keeping some state, and some other state is delegated also. But especially in terms of good privacy preserving things, you need to keep a lot more state locally,
right?
But like running a one-on-one blockchain is not expensive. It's like trivially cheap. Like your phone already has a database. We just happen to call this database now blockchain. So yeah, when people hear like, oh, your phone is going to run on blockchain, they think like, oh, this is going to.
What I'm saying is that like user devices are going to have more, are going to preserve more data, and that data is going to interact with other systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like one of the really weird distinctions right now is like when you look at the existing wallet landscape, it's like my phone has to issue some RPC calls to the network or to like an Africa specific Ethereum to like get a balance from. That's a super weird abstraction. We can also say, well, this phone just runs a super light Ethereum node that downloads some data from the P2P stack where it like just downloads the data about your account. And now all these nodes just sit on the same network and get like same underlying infrastructure connected all of them. And I think we're just going to be heading there because this is going to be way more efficient and it's way more flexible, because now you can also start programming. Maybe I have a phone and a second phone or a computer at home and maybe a laptop with me, right? And like with Anoma as the operating system, you can define like how you want to synchronize the data between these like 4 different devices, because the devices for nodes can be aware that these are logically connected devices, even though they're on the same physical machine.
Right. Okay. And so I think I see from where this is heading. Give us a better picture of, zoom out and how you consider thousands of devices, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of devices connected to these networks, interacting with block space and verifiable transactions through cryptographic means, as aka block things. Where do the LLMs fit within this? And I think one of the assumptions is that LLMs are going to replace solvers. There's a lot of talk also about like user own data and perhaps like running your own inference and this sort of thing. If we're going down this like user own data, you use your own AI and also a sovereignty over your own transactions, how does like the AI part fit into this?
Yeah, so those principles. I'm pretty skeptical that solvers will be replaced by LLMs, because solving is computationally very hard, and it's kind of deterministic. So it's like you're always going to build very heavily optimized things for most routes. I think what the LLMs will do though is they're going to sit on the human input level. On like, you're not going to have to type in you're not going to have to encode your own transactions, kind of like have these like very fixed wallet interfaces. It's more going to be a chatbot where like you type in, I would like to move some assets from A to B, and then the LLM that you run locally on your phone figures out what is the right intent to sort of generate, and then send to the rest. And then these in the next 3 to 5 years, the solving part of like making, like figuring out which intents overlap, I think that's still going to be spectralized solves. The other aspect is like, let's say you want to generate an image, and then you run, so you want to outsource now the task of running computer, of running the inference to someone else. You would also, again, like write this as your local intent. You would send this to the network, and then a number of solvers maybe running models and running inference, like generate the image to send back to you. So I think it's going to be very much on this, like, I view LLMs as like, they make human input way easier, and they make sort of machine output way easier to interpret as humans. So they're going to help a lot on that side, and they're also going to help a lot on like, you want specific data to be run through a model, and you want to outsource this to a third party. In that case, you're going to use like your local LLM to structure the intent, send it off, sign it, send it off to the network, then another LLM will like run the compute and send you back the business.
Right.
I think this is really going to evolve a lot around this. And the important thing is like, this allows many different providers to coexist, which is very important. So, like, rather than having one dominant, because now like these solvers essentially run these LLMs for you, but it means that rather than having one dominant mega solver somewhere in the middle that everyone has to trust and everyone has to rely on, since everyone's just issuing these intents in like the same structure, there can now be a market where many different solvers competing for sort of business, and then specialize in different niches. And this is like where I'm kind of worried, but like, if we fuck this up from our industry, from the sort of distributed system side of things, that will like all just be beholden to something like ChatGPT, OpenAI, because they'll just run this like mega solver that you all have to talk to. And I think we actually here have the chance to like build an actual like, fairly decentralized economic model where many of these teams can compete with each other.
Yeah, there appears to be like very different philosophies around how this looks in the future, and certainly like the ChatGPTs and OpenAIs of the world, where I'm sure they'll want to capture all of the data, all of the inference, and be the kind of centralized solver. But then like on the crypto side, and from the folks that do, there is this like counter to that, which says that LLMs should be run locally. The LLMs should talk to each other, right? This kind of like more peer-to-peer model, user-owned data model. I was talking to Ilya yesterday, and he sees a future where there's basically like very few super apps, and that even if you take a step out of crypto and just like generally all of our intentions, whether that is like financial intentions, communication, or interacting with any like business or third party, will be done through like one application that will connect through all of the services that you currently use. All of those services, those current like intermediaries, will cease to exist because they're not going to have much function. I mean, like, there's basically sort of two things we do, right? We communicate with people and we communicate with businesses or like third party entities. And most of those communications, I would say, like say you're booking a flight or buying product, you're initiating a state change on someone else's computer. Yeah, basically, like if you're booking a flight, initially on many different computers, right? But like if you're booking a flight, you're creating an intent that creates a state change on someone else's database and like gets you the flight. And at the same time, you're creating a state change on your bank that is like sending the money to them. So that's like one type of interaction. And the other type of interaction we have is communicating with people. And like currently we have 25 different ways to do that, like text messaging, all sorts of messaging apps, email, phone, whatever, right? And you can disintermediate all of those different services by having one super app that just talks to APIs, like at all the businesses with which we interact and with all the people in our contact list. What's the future of kind of, tech basically? Yeah, if there's one super app, like where are the opportunities to create value in the middle? So this is super interesting actually. Like, so Anoma is not building the super app. Anoma is building the infrastructure through which the super app can connect to all these different things. That like you have this uniform, sort of call it mycelium,
like this backbone that just connects all these different things, and that super app can plug into without having to understand, oh, this is like this specific API for that flight booking service, and that specific API for that other flight booking service. And this is actually also where like the heterogeneous trust model in the example comes. Where it's like, if you want to book a flight and maybe a hotel at the same time, they're most likely not being sold by the same people. So now you need to have this atomic synchronicity guarantee email you across two different systems. And this is a lot where the heterogeneous trust model of Anoma comes in, where like if validators, if there's a large enough overlap in a validator set, you can actually make two systems that are mostly asynchronous all the time, synchronous, so that you can guarantee you will only book the flight if you also book a hotel at the same time. So you either do it together or you do none. Which currently just what travel agencies kind of do for, like, they guarantee you the synchronicity. Yeah. And I think on the super app side, this will very much do most likely look like chatbot kind of thing. That like you chat with your local LLM that stores a lot of your local context that can then also synchronize across your devices. This again really need privacy, because this is going to be like one litmus like that context is no version know more about you than anything in history of humanity. If that leaks your big comments, but you'll soon be able to synchronize this across devices, and then you just going to like chat, like find all the options for like flights and hotels in Lisbon, like flights to Lisbon, hotels in Lisbon, and then it kind of will figure out using this kind of VP infrastructure, like, let me send a bunch of intents, let's see who I get back to, and then, oh, I've gotten these like 3 things, presents it back to you after maybe a minute or so, and then you go like, okay, please do it. And then it again calls on GPU's trust component and goes like, yes, now like pay for the synchronicity to like book all these things. Let's see. I think it's actually going to be like look way nicer for most humans. But I think it'd be terrifying. Imagine if this like context was run by like one US firm, and we all like just uploaded our consciousness to one US firm. Like the potential for abuse is just very, very high. Luckily, it's a double-edged sword. The world is more multipolar, and like we're totally moving to this very like multipolar world order right now. And so I think as soon as you have competing interests, there's going to be competition, which is like the world to some extent is a free market of countries competing against each other. And so like I think this is actually where blockchains shine, because like they allow a lot of these things to like very much compete with each other, but like you can serve a uniform interface over that. So I'm somewhat more optimistic that we're not going to collapse into this like one US company is going to rule us all. What happened to Facebook, but rather we're going to like have a good local LLM, your local friendly agent, and then like it uses the rest of the world to figure out how to get it to you. But it's like we're not going to send buses. Hopefully.
Yeah, even in a fully abstracted world, you're still going to have to use multiple super apps to interact with different services that fall within different kind of ends of that polarization.
Actually, my hope is that like the super app on your phones, like we just talk to it, and that it like all the abstraction happens in the back end. So,
like increasingly, I feel you're having conversations here and over the last couple of months, like that AI is just a master abstract. It just abstracts away so much complexity. I mean, you just think about using your phone today. Like, we were so used to using our phones to do stuff. And the UI is pretty good, and like, it's nice and shiny and like easy to find things. But the amount of steps required to do something as simple as like sending a message, like communicating a piece of information to someone else. Like we were texting today, like the amount of steps required just for me to tell you, like, let's do podcast at 1 o'clock. Like it's an enormous amount of step. Yeah. When it's just like an idea, and you need to be aware of the idea and confirm. Of course, the next step after this is like, mind interfaces, right? Where the AI is to intermediate people's thoughts. That very far to be honest, but interesting enough, like this is where intents become really cool, right? Like you will currently think of intents as very much like financial in nature, but they're just signage. Yeah, like Bitcoin is like not a physical Bitcoin that move around. It's just like a shared belief that this piece of information represents like actual like US dollar amounts. And it's like in the scheduling example, like I have some preferences and you have some preferences, and over time we can train our local agents on it. And then we can just express the intent of like, yes, I would like to like do a podcast. And then our two agents most likely will do this like multi-round negotiation using intents.
Maybe on the P2P level, maybe like you check at some other like underlying database somewhere on Ethereum for like some specific information, whether there's like some double booking. But like all of this will just happen in the background, and to us it will just be presented as like, is there intersection between the preferences that we both have?
Yeah.
It'll be very cool. So, yeah, I'm actually pretty optimistic for the future. Yeah. So let's just before we wrap up here, bring it back to Namada and the recent launch, and so tell folks like what's happening right now with Namada and how they can get involved, and like what's on the roadmap and teams buildings. Yeah, so for Namada, we're currently phase 2. We're just kind of discussing phase 3. There's some upgrades coming now. So if you want to get involved, please like join the forum, join the Discord, join the Twitter, join the Twitter for Twitter, and just see what's going on. Yeah. What's the most exciting stuff happening? What's going on? I mean, Namada speeds.
That is exciting. I mean, what can people do?
We sort of like all assume that the stuff this works, and like in the last couple of years, we've given up on the idea of decentralization. Everyone does like one big server, and then you're like, oh, cool, I can talk to a server. Well, you could talk to a server 20 years ago. That's like not really that innovative. But like Namada, that's permanently validated, running the entire protocol. It's fully decentralized. Like I touched no infrastructure at this point. Actually, I didn't touch any infrastructure at any point. And it's just like, if that's super exciting. It's like an actually good globally distributed community that's coming together. So right now, if you want to get involved, there's a bunch of front ends. You can start building your own front ends. You can start also still running IBC readers. That's I think the next step, opening up the IBC channels. And so really right now it's like still in the infrastructure phase. How do we roll this out? Yeah. But like if you want to get involved right now and actually build bits, like think about building UIs that, for example, the shield swaps. A lot of the base infrastructure is already there, so like we can start building shielded swap tools with osmosis, for example. And you can start building shielded swaps with Ethereum. Like a lot of these things are now possible. So that's super cool. Like please get involved, Cat. And yeah, just start playing around with it. I think we in the industry I think not enough people play with this tech. Like you should like write a little bit of Python code, just make it happen. Write a little bit of this, like make it happen. Just like play with things, right? Yeah, that's coming up on Namada. So like I hope that over the next couple of weeks, community is going to advance the whole phases. And then you can start using it. You can start building cool privacy preserving applications if you want.
What's your wish list of privacy preserving applications you want to see built?
Honestly, my wish list is just like one good UX, like a UI where I can just like move assets across chain without leaking config. Like currently use Kraken for this, and like it's not ideal. And I'd like to see that. Like, it's very simple, so please, you are interested in building up applications, please get involved. And
Well, one thing I'm curious about is, we've been, as crypto users, leaking so much data on chain, over like years of using crypto, all your transactions, their transaction history, interactions between all your different wallets, etc. How can people like use Namada to have much better actually practices and like very specifically? And I would like to be able to move my co-ops to a new wallet that is not linked to all the previous ones, right? Because I hold a bunch of co-ops and CryptoKitties. Like I didn't really get into the NFT fit, but I got into like the early NFT experiments in like 2018. So I'd like to be able to move down to like some clean wallet because that's paid to do it centralized basis. Right.
But yeah, I'd say I think at some point, I mean, like if the nice thing is like you don't have to do it all at once. You can sort of like slowly move some assets and like break the leakability between all the assets this way. So you don't have to do it all at once, but I think over time, I just imagine that my parents will never want to use these systems if like their neighbors can see whether they went to the doctors or whether like how much the salary they receive from the government, right? Like this is kind of like thing. And I think this is going to be hard requirement from a space to grow beyond. So the bubble or the niche they become here.
Yeah. What do you think about Mika is starting to now show its face. I've talked to people. I don't use centralized exchange very much, but I've talked to people recently that told me that using a Binance account now in France, they're asking for 7 years of transaction history and their source of fund origins and this sort of thing. And I think that's only going to get worse. How do you think like using something like Namada is going to play nicely with that reality we're somehow getting into.
I think it's we actually need this. I think we need. I'm personally actually somewhat of a fan of Mika, I have to say. I think they fucked it on the stablecoin and things, but like centralized exchanges should be following some of these, like whether these rules are correct. I have in some way they go too far, but Rebbe always to this. I think from a data protection perspective, it's like we need to live in a world where you're not leaking all the data to North Korea. And currently, this is the world we're living blockchains. This is not a good world to be in. So we will need some data protection guarantees down the line. I mean, GDPR was clearly a long Islami. Like, we shouldn't be leaking a bunch of personally identified information to arbitrary strangers on the internet. So I think there will come this push actually, which will ensure really effective. I mean, I find myself just clicking to accept most of the times. But it did change, for example. I mean, it did. There was this step. Okay, I've heard of stored. Right. There was a stat recently I saw which said the Europeans spend over 500 million hours a year clicking. So it's like more than 1 hour per year per person clicking on cookie banners. I mean, yes, they are going to. I'm not a huge fan of the overall regulatory landscape because I think that that's like very much innovation killing, and like they do regulation with the regulatory for like the sake of regulators, and the regulation costs. Like the compliance costs, and more often it's like then the money laundering it is supposed to be stopped. I had this interesting experience, right? Like where I think crypto is going to win somewhat by default, because every year like the AML compliance data. And very specifically, I live in Switzerland, my parents live in Germany, and my parents sent me wiring some money from the German bank account. The German bank had, what the fuck, why you like attacking a shady jurisdiction of Switzerland? And I mean, like then a real human looked at it, then like that was spoken about. So like there's probably like 3 or 4 hours of discussion that the bank had eat for. Right? And so it's like my parents like the civil service. So like they've been doing the same things the last 40, 50 years. But at some point, like the marginal cost of them as customer is just going to become too high. And like every year we add extra regulation that banks have to follow. And like banks are just pricing themselves out of a business model because at some point they'll like my grandma will be the only person because she like doesn't have a credit card and like only ever goes to the same local branch. But even she may be now suspicious because who the fuck doesn't have a credit card and who the fuck doesn't use online banking? And so like this compliance process is going to be a real problem. And like if I was kind of in that industry, I'd be very much focused on like how do we reduce cost of compliance? Yeah. Because otherwise, like most of your customers are not going to be worth troubling. I mean, it's not the banks that are outpricing themselves. I mean, if you want to get a little bit conspiratorial here, it is the finance ministers of the G7 through the FATF that are creating the rules that banks now have to. But I feel we're really not thinking about the long-term consequences because, like, of course, once you start saying like, well, my clients aren't the worthwhile customer to bank anymore, which is clearly the bank's correct choice, right? Like if the bank has to spend 4 hours to compliance on like a single transaction, like you got to be brilliant that money there needs to be meat on the bone for the bank to like keep you as a customer. So what I'm saying is if you're going to kick you out and like, but this is like driving everyone to crypto. This is like cannot be the interest of people. Like what I'm saying is that the banks are not banks. I'm sorry, it is regulation now that is coerced through the rules of the FATF. Yeah, it is not their fault, but if I was heavily invested in banks right now, I'd be really fucking worried about this. That like there are very few customers that are like worth their money in the future. By the way, study the FATF. If you don't know what the FATF is, look into this. It is the most shadiest of organizations. It's not even an organization. It's just it has no legal status. It's just a group of people that happen to have an office at the OECD in Paris, and that basically define all the rules for compliance in the world. And it's baffling. But I mean, maybe like one last building for me, like where I'm like, I said this on a panel yesterday here. And it's like, if you don't like specific rules, like please get involved. It's like technology isn't the answer. Like get involved, make a difference there. Because like to me, like I'm much more of a Swiss prepper than an American prepper. Like the American preppers are worried for when the U.S. government comes after them, whereas in Switzerland we're worried for when the Russians come after us, right? Like this is sort of like the dichotomy. Like because people fundamentally trust their local governance system. And like, so everyone, I think that you encourage everyone to get involved with your local governance system. So like, because that's fundamentally the trust that you should be having. The other thing is like, you really want to think in this multipolar world order that we're moving to, we've got to be building resilient systems. So it's not privacy to hike on taxes. Like, that's not the fucking point. It's like privacy for national defense, privacy to defend against North Koreans. Like, this is why we want to have resilient financial systems, because we want to be able to build coordination systems that are resilient against Asian state attacks. Because like in the next 5, 10, 15 years, those are going to come. Like, the world is going to get messier. And like, as like people living in Lisbon, for example, like I live in Zug, like you should really deeply care that like your local system is as resilient as possible. This is like the things that I think about, and like for kind of, this is like the reason why I think we should be building a lot of this infrastructure. Like, not as an alternative system, but as an upgrade to the existing system, because the existing systems are brittle, and I'm worried that they're not designed for the sort of messy world that we're heading into. It's a great note to end on. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you very much. Pleasure as always.